We're live.
We're live. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Time to accelerate on
That's
this
right.
on this
That's
beautiful
right.
Monday morning.
Rock and roll. What are we talking about today? We're talking about leasing.
Talking about leasing.
And leasing. You know, when we leasing is becoming more and more prevalent again. I mean, back in the old days, that was the only way we made money. There was no such thing as a conversion bonus, so
Right.
we had to lease equipment. And now with all the technology changes, what's coming out, chip and pin next year. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think there's probably 80% of merchants still need to upgrade their equipment from the old stuff. So
I would say at least 80.
At least 80%.
You know, I would think probably that 20% that have upgraded are probably bigger, more corporate sort of merchants.
Right. Yeah.
I would bet that 90%
of the small to medium sized merchant is not ready for chip and pin.
No, not at all.
So it's a great opportunity. So we want to talk about leasing, and I know when we started talking about this last week, we wanted to, one of the things that I know when John started in the industry and when I started in the industry, and I had target numbers. You know, every month, every week, I wanted to make X amount a week.
X amount of dollars, like right. If you want to make, that's exactly right. So if you want to make, let's say, $1,000 a month or a week, if you're going to make $1,000 a week, what's your target? And you should break it down in a week. We found that months, if you're trying to track your new accounts by month, you know, it's nice to know what your monthly number is, but it's better to go sprint by week without, would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a shorter sprint.
Less than, you know, I can only keep track of 1 week at a time.
Exactly,
you know?
Exactly. So how do we do that? And I think $1,000 a week, I mean, that's what I would run with. And that's what, you know, you see a lot of our guys that are out there, ladies that are out there hitting it at a good level. That's how they look at it. I need to make $1,000 a week. Okay. So I'm making, you know, so 50,000 a year plus my residuals are growing. And how do I do that?
Right. Let's be clear. That $1,000 it doesn't include residuals.
No.
Residuals are building up.
The 1,000 a week is just upfront commission.
Right.
So we've thrown out a couple options for leasing. With the chip and pin, we use the FD130 terminal, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. We have the FD130 Duo with the pin pad. We'll talk about that, and we're going to look at Clover.
So is the Duo, is that the pin pad attached to it, or is it inside?
It's attached to it, so or inside the terminal. So we need to. Not all merchants will use the pin pad. You know, so talk to your agent director. There's different scenarios where this is going to come into play, because you have to think about that. Some merchants you go to, they can't have the pin pad in the terminal because the terminal is way behind the counter. And so what are they going to have the customer come? So you need to get an external pin. And we could talk about that, but we want to get the concept of leasing and what it means, so you understand what you're going. Because a pin pad is nothing to add that. It's, you know, $5 to $10 more a month to do that. So, you know, I guess, how do you approach this with the merchant? You got to know what they're using to process, and it's one of our questions in discovery. You know, when I go in, I'm talking with the merchant. I want to know who they're processing with. I want to know what kind of equipment they're using. Look at the terminal. Take a picture of it with your cell phone and text it to your agent director if you're not sure what it is. You'll know the chip and pin terminals. The card actually goes in the bottom of the terminal instead of just, you can either swipe
like in the
side.
front.
Yeah, in the front. Yeah, you just kind of insert it into the terminal, so you can look and see if it's smart card ready or not. So that'll give you an idea.
Yeah, and that's chip and pin. You know, chip means chip and pin. You know, if you look at, I was filming a different video yesterday. I was looking at the cards in my wallet. I have five cards, 4 credit cards and a debit card, and 2 of the 5 cards, you can see on the front, have a little computer chip.
Right.
And so look at your own cards, and you'll see this more and more, is you'll see this little chip on the front. Well, that's because cards are going to get started. In Europe, for example, like if you go to Europe with an American issued card, they just have to swipe it through the side. It doesn't read the chip. You got to, all the cards issued in Europe have for years had this chip on them, and so they put it in the terminal, and then you enter your PIN.
Right.
And it gets rid of all this fraud that's going on in this country. So you know, because you can imagine now, as we do in this country, you go, well, why there's so much fraud is you go swipe a card and then you sign whatever name is, and rarely, you know, sometimes people look at the back of the card more often these days. But if it looks vague, if it looks like they don't, oh, it's a signature, whatever. If it looks somewhat close, they don't ask anything.
Nope.
All mine say see photo ID. So about 35%, if they even look, right. And so then they'll look and they go, oh, it says see photo ID. I'll show my ID. And so they look at that and see if that's the same card. Anyway, so this whole chip and pin thing,
by October next year.
October 2015 is when this comes into play. Now, they don't have to have equipment or that sort of thing. It's not like the world's going to shut down for the merchants. And I know this becomes a chip and pin conversation rather than a leasing, but it's important to understand why they need it so you can go in there and lease equipment. Anyway, by October 15th or October whatever of 2015, they need to start being able to accept pin.
No, and I don't know the number. When they starting in October, when they're not running the chip and pin, and they're going to downgrade those transactions, right? So
we don't know if they're going to downgrade, which means if you aren't reading the smart card and entering a pin, does that make it a more expensive transaction? Right. We don't know yet. I would suspect at some point it will, without question, it's going to, because it'll be more like a hand-keyed transaction, which is more expensive. Right. So things beginning in October of next year or 2015, not being able to have these have this terminal that we're talking about leasing is going to start proving to be a bad thing for a merchant. Right. So they're going to wish that they would have had it. And so what you want to do is you want to get around to all your existing merchants right away before the competition does, because the competition comes in and starts talking about the stuff that you've never even talked to them about and scares them. They're going to think, one, why didn't you contact them? And two, this person did, so they must be better than you. So you don't want either one of those. So the best thing to do is be proactive. And then if you go beyond being proactive with your clients, you can also get a hold of everybody else's clients, and you be the one that they introduces it to them. Right. So then when you do, that's when these new terminals come into play that can do the chip and pin, that can do Apple Pay, all these different things. And so that's why you can go in and you can lease some equipment. And of course you get the account, you lease equipment. Man, it's a great thing. So now we're at that point back to, let's talk about leasing. And of course you get conversion bonuses, but if you're gonna make $1,000 a week, if you're gonna make $1,000 a week and a conversion bonus, let's say is $225, you're going to have to do 4 to 5 of those a week. That's a pretty healthy pace. And that's great if you can do it. That's the level that we ran at, but we're a little aggressive. And most people aren't going to go after that hard. But you go, okay, then so you want to ask yourself a question. How can I make $1,000 a week writing 2 accounts a week? Right. And that's really because the average number of accounts written in this business across the country, as somebody doing this full time, is 8 a month, about 2 a week. Right. So how can you make $1,000 writing 2 accounts a week? Right.
Well, we figured the average conversion bonus 225 to 275 in that window. So let's look at a couple options.
So if you I hate to interrupt, but it's what I do. Right. So let's use 200. Let's just use 200 for easy math. 200
easy math.
So now you have to make $300 more on each of these accounts.
Right.
And how do you do that?
Well,
leasing.
Let me show you.
Okay.
So let's look, we have the FD 130 and we have the FD Duo. So what I want to do is give you a range, leasing that terminal. We'll talk about like how to present it and a couple questions to ask too. Before I quote a price to the merchant for the lease, I ask them a couple questions, because leasing, like everything else, is based on credit of ownership. And you don't want to go to someone and go, hey, how's your credit? Because you're going to offend them. So
yeah, at least you're going to startle me, and I'm going to think I don't know why you're going.
What else is going on? Right. You're asking me that. So when I go in and I'm talking with the merchant, I'm going to establish the value of getting this new equipment, and it's only X amount of dollars a month. But before I tell them the X, I ask, well, let me ask you, how's credit of ownership? And they'll go naturally.
Well, why don't you ask me?
I go, John, you need to upgrade that terminal.
You're right, I do.
And I can help you out with that. Let me ask you, how's credit of ownership?
What do we mean credit of ownership?
No, you're the sole owner, right?
Yeah.
Okay, how's your credit?
Oh, fine.
Okay, great. Now I can quote a price. Let's say I go, hey, how's your credit? And you go,
well, I recently went through a divorce, and the attorney's got all the money, and my wife is off with the tennis pro, and it's like,
it's a little sketchy.
Okay. It's taken a dent or two.
Okay, yeah. So now I have some information, because I know this lease is getting underwritten on John's credit. So let's take just a regular FD 130 terminal. You want to if they have good credit, I always start at a $39.95 to $49.95, somewhere in that window, depending on some other factors like.
So like $1.25 a day.
Yeah, really, $1.25 a day. And imagine when they start getting upcharged for not using chip and pin, could equal a lot more than $1.25 a day for them, depending on how much volume the merchant processes. So,
and also if my old equipment isn't secure and it gets hacked, I end up owing $250,000.
Yeah. So you wish you would have paid the $130.
I wish I would have paid, got an upgraded safe and ready to roll terminal.
Yeah, exactly. So let's look at that at $39.95. With a good credit scenario, you're looking at a $530 commission at $39.99. I'm sorry, 99. At $49.99, you're looking at about $700. So, you know, finding that extra, we said 300 a deal. Well, I've doubled that, and you're doing 2 deals a month. I mean, you're talking $1,500
2 deals a week,
or 2 deals a week. Excuse me. You're talking, you know, $1,500 to $2,000 a week. Now that's on the standalone terminal. If you went with the Duo with a pen pad built in, you know, same situation, $49.99 to $59.99 because it's more equipment. So you're going to
more expensive
equipment. You're talking $660 to $830. So
I can make $660 to $830 if they've got good credit.
If they've got good credit. If they've got bad credit, you're $600 to $750.
So okay, so let's just pull out leasing. Let's just pull out an example. Right. So and if you go on, when you log on, you go under, where do they find the lease calculator?
Under calculators, under money, go to money and it'll say calculators, then they'll have a lease calculator on
right. So find the calculator, and when you look at it, there's only a couple fields to fill in. Now you'll notice that Chuck is talking about, you know, 39, 49, and one of the things that people get confused about is that, so the cost, our cost on the equipment when we buy it from the factory or whatever, is always the same.
Right.
So how can we charge different amounts per month for leasing?
You know, the example I've always used is, let's say you and I went and bought the exact same car. Okay. What are the odds that you and I are going to pay the exact same dollar amount for the same car?
About zero.
It's about zero, because you have to understand that our scenario, maybe our incomes are different or our credit is different, and then that's a big one. And when it comes to financing, if you're financing a home, you get a better rate if you have better credit.
True.
So it's no different on the leasing, and that's why I ask up front, how's credit of ownership? Because if I'm going in and I go, look, you know, this let's say it's one of my merchants. You know, this guy's been processing with me for 2 years, got a great relationship with him. I want to give him a real square deal on this. And I come in at $39.95 and I go, well, how's credit of ownership? He goes, man, I've taken some bumps over the last year. I might go $44.95.
So how would you say that? You go, oh, well, you know what? They're probably not going to let it go at $39.95. You know, what are we talking? And I
try not to quote a price until I've asked the credit question. You know, sometimes you're kind of cornered into it, and then I'll give them a range. I go, look, you know, this terminal is going to range on a lease scenario from $39.95 up to $49.95. Let me ask you, how's credit of ownership? So, you know, I kind of give it. So then if they go, because they know, they're
right.
going to go, well,
I go, I have the tennis pro, the lawyers, my wife.
Right.
So then
then I'm going to come in maybe halfway. You know, I don't like to come in at the top. I like to come in like kind of halfway.
What if I said, man, I just, you know, I bankrupt?
We'll say, you know what, we'll try. You know, if that's,
well, then you go at the top.
I'd go at the top.
Okay, so then you'd go at 49.
Yeah.
If I just took a beating because of the tennis pro and the divorce, my wife.
But at $44.95.
Okay, but if it's like, oh man, it's good. I've got stellar.
Well, especially if it's my merchant, I go in at 39.
Okay.
You know, because I'm not switching over their account at this time, right? Because I've already got it. But if I'm going to a new merchant, that it's a new relationship with me, I'm going to adjust this depending on how much I save them per month. You know, if I go into a guy and I'm saving him $185 a month on his credit card processing, I'm going to shoot for the moon. I'm saving the guy $180 a month. I'm going to go, hey, you can get that terminal. It's $49.95 a month.
So let's stop on that one, because that's an important thing to do that most people never do.
Right.
So what usually people do is they get, let's say these are statements, right? They get all these, they get the statements, right? They get the merchant statements, and we do our analysis. And one of the things that you want to do is you want to ask your agent director. You want to go, hey, they should be asking you, but sometimes they don't do this. Right. What I always want to do is, if I'm an agent director, I would want to ask you, I'd go, well, how much do you want to make on this account? And then you'd go, how much can I make on the account? You go, well, there's 2 scenarios.
Right.
One is, let's look at their equipment. This is one of the big reasons that on that cover sheet, we ask about equipment. Do they lease it? Do they own it? What is it?
Right.
Because if it's not one of these new update pieces of equipment, we want to get them one. And so, like Chuck said, if we're saving them, whatever it was,
$80 a month or whatever, or even $100.
Let's say $100 a month,
right.
just for it's easier math.
Right.
So if it's $100 a month, so I can go, okay, I can save them $100 a month, or the way I work it out. Let's say there's $100 in profit a month. So let's say there's $100 a month in profit in this account. Now, the next question is, what do I need to do to get it?
Right.
And hopefully I've sold with massive value. Maybe it's we honor the same rates, but we go, you know what? Why don't we do this, Mr. Merchant? Why don't we, you know, that you've got a great program. The problem is your terminal could either be hacked or it's not, certainly not chip and pin ready, PCI, whatever the case is. So if we go in with your scenario at, let's say $40 a month, 30, 39. So we can save them enough on the rate
to just pay their lease.
To pay their lease. So we go, hey, it's the same thing that
Except
you're paying.
You're getting new equipment.
You're
That's
getting
the
new
difference.
So you may or may not have understood that, but we've done that thousands of times.
Right. In that you have to kind of be conscious. And when you run into a scenario, you know, talk to your agent director about that, because I mean, and ideally, if you can go in and save them just enough to cover they're going, okay, so really it's not costing me any more, and I'm getting a brand new terminal, I get a lease, you're making $600-700. Plus you've maintained as much margin in the back end, which increases your conversion bonus and increases your residuals.
Right.
So it's like you gotta, and when you're new, I get it. When you're new, it's kind of a fancy word problem because you have a handful of variables you're working with.
It is a fancy word problem.
It is a fancy. So
I love that.
You know, it is. You know, it's like that's my 13-year-old in her math today. It's like a fancy problem. So understand, but you're kind of looking at the whole thing, going, okay, I've got upfront conversion bonus I want to pay attention to. I want to save them enough to get their lease because I want to make that $500, $600, $700. We didn't even talk about Clover leasing. I mean, when you get into Clover leasing, with what the industry bears from a $99 a month lease up to $130, you're talking $1,000 to $1,500. I mean, right there, one Clover lease a week, you've made your 1,000 plus your conversion. So you got to kind of be mindful of this. Understand that you're not going to, if this is a new industry for you, you're not going to hop off this today and go, yep, I got it. But before you quote anything, get the full picture if you can. And if they ask, because merchants will ask, well, how much is that new terminal? Always present the lease first. Because they go, well, how much is a terminal? I go, you know what? We have terminals that range anywhere between $39.95 a month all the way up to $129.95 a month. Let me ask you, I'm sure you probably want something simple, right? And they go, yeah. And they go, well, then I could probably get you closer to the lower end of that spectrum. And that's all I say. And then I planted enough seed in their mind. They go, okay, I know it's going to be closer to the lower end. Now I want to collect the data. I want to get the statements. I want to look at the numbers, and then come in with kind of an idea. And sometimes you go in A/B. You know, sometimes they can go, look, I can get you this lease for 49 and your rate is this. Or I can get you this lease for, you know, 69, but your rate's much cheaper. Because if you're foregoing some of that back-end revenue, you got to make it up front. And what you'll find, the more back-end revenue that you have, the more residuals you have, you'll find later that you will forego a little more on the upfront lease commission because you understand the power of building that residual base.
Right. So therefore what he's saying is that you don't want to give away all the profit in an account because that slows your residual growth. Right. And I know we're talking leasing, but it's you got to understand the balance, because when you start, especially when you're new, leasing, let's go back to the scenario. If you want to make $1,000 a month up front and you make
$1,000 a week.
Right. But your conversion bonuses cover half of that.
Right.
Where's the other half going to come from? It comes from being savvy about how to use leasing to the merchant's benefit and frankly yours.
Well, in the leasing and the upfront conversion bonus, that funds you to build your portfolio, to build your residual base. Because eventually you'll be to the point where you go, I make $1,000 a week in residuals. So it's like, okay, now then you get kind of like the bug. You go, okay, now how do I do $2,000 a week? How do I do $3,000 a week? So you can do it real quick with the leasing. And so always look for lease opportunities. So ask a lot of questions about the equipment, pay attention to it right away, look at it, give them a range if they try pinning you down, make sure you get a handle on credit. You know, hey, how's credit of ownership? Go, oh, how's your credit? Don't do it like that. Go, how's credit of ownership? What do you mean? Well, you're the only owner, right? Yes. Well, how's your credit? Soft. Go into it soft. They'll be forthcoming with it. And then gather the data, get with your AD, agent director, and they're going to go ahead just strategize this deal, because there's a lot of money to be made on leasing. There is. I mean,
and you can ask, well, what does it mean if I lease, and what does it mean if I don't? Have that conversation on every account.
And understand up front. I mean, you know what? It's how it works. You're here. This is you are not a nonprofit person. You're here to make money doing this, right? So understand when you're presenting a lease to someone on, let's say the terminal cost you $300. And when I mean you, when the terminal cost is $300, so you're plugging that into the calculator. You're plugging in the lease payment. So when you're talking with the merchant, and they always present the lease option first. How much is the terminal? It's X a month to X a month, in that range. Okay. Some merchants will be savvy and they go, "What's the cost to buy it?" Don't give it away, because if your cost is $300, don't go, "Well, it's $400." Because why would I lease something for $49.95 a month when I can buy it for $400? You have to make it relational. Right. You know, you have to go, well, you can buy it, it's $8.95, or you can lease it, because coming up with $8.95 up front might be a little bigger trick than just a monthly payment. Exactly. So you can't have it so lopsided to go, I'd be crazy to lease, because because then you'll get into all kinds of weird stuff.
So you're saying just because the cost on is $300, don't sell yourself short and sell it for $400?
Well, no, because most, do you know how much, it's funny, because if you ever get a chance, and I'm addicted to the show, and I talk about all the time Shark Tank. And right. One of the questions they ask on Shark Tank is they go, "What's your cost of goods? What's it cost you to manufacture that? Then what's your sale price?" And, a lot, the ones that they're real interested in, that, and I guess the guys on the show probably have made some money along the way, right?
Not the first trip to the business rodeo.
Not the first trip. So they understand business. They understand how to make money. What they look for is things that have a 300 to 400% markup. Yeah, it cost me $3 to manufacture, but I sell it for $15. Now we're interested. So the same applies here. If your cost is $300, you shouldn't be selling it at $400. You should be selling it at $900. Exactly. Or leasing it for $39
right.
to $49.
And that's a relation you're talking about. That makes now leasing becomes more appealing to the merchant. They don't have to come up with $1,000 up front. They come up with $49 a month.
Exactly. And I'm not an accountant, nor do I play one on TV, but the lease payment is tax deductible because
the other thing is depreciation and all this nonsense.
Yes.
You don't want. It's much more exciting to lease for everybody involved.
There you go. So go out, lease some deals, make some money, make your $1,000 a week, and it's a lot easier to build your portfolio when you're making $1,000 a week, because you can fund it to build it and have fun in the process.
Exactly.
So, all right.
There we have it. Let's go do it.